Today we're going to talk about phenotypic variation. I'm Brian Sanchez.
And I'm Stephanie Luna.
Before we can begin discussing about what phenotypic variation is and what leads to it, we first have to talk about what a genotype is. A genotype is an organism's genetic identity. It is all the sets of genes an organism contains. An organism's genotype is not something that someone can tell just from looking at an organism. If you look at the picture below, you can see that there are 3 possible allele combinations that a plant can have, but only 2 phenotypes are expressed. An organism's genotype leads to what genes an organism will express and its phenotype. Next, we will talk about what is a phenotype. A phenotype is the observable properties of an organism that are produced by the genotype and the environment. These are things like animals' morphology, development, biochemical or physical properties, and behavior. The normal reaction describes the pattern of phenotypic expression of a single genotype across a range of environments, and it can lead to phenotypic variation. Now we will talk about what phenotypic variation is. Phenotypic variation is variability in phenotypes that exist within a population. It is traits like height and weight in humans, color of fur in rabbits, leaf shape in plants, and antibiotic resistance in bacteria. It is caused by a variety of things like natural selection, mutations, and gene flow. Natural selection is the differential survival and reproduction of individuals due to differences in phenotype. 4 conditions must be met for natural selection to occur. 1 is that the organisms can reproduce and form offspring. 2 is that there is variation in the individual's characteristics among the members of the population. 3 is that the characteristics can be passed on to their offspring. And 4 is that some animals will survive and live better than others.
Fitness and phenotypic variation. Fitness is generally measured in terms of reproductive success and survival rates. The level of fitness of an individual usually depends on its phenotypic variation. If the individual possesses more phenotypic variation, it generally has a greater fitness because if it has more differences in phenotype, and there happens to be any environmental change, then it will have a greater chance to survive in the new environment and reproduce. Some examples of phenotypic variation are old fuel mice experiment and antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Next, we will be talking about mutations and how they affect phenotypic variation. Mutations are changes in the structure of a gene, which ultimately can give rise to continuous changes in phenotypic variation. In addition, mutations are considered the ultimate source of variation, since mutations contribute to genetic variation in turn can give rise to new phenotypes. An example can be a mutation in the genes of a butterfly, which can cause many things, for instance, a change in their wing color giving rise to a new phenotype of wing colors, increasing variation within the population. Next, we'll be talking about things that cause reduction of genetic variation. Some things that can cause a reduction are inbreeding and genetic drift. Inbreeding is the process of mating within relatives. Genetic drift is variation in relative frequencies of different genotypes, and in small populations, it can lead to disappearance of particular genes in small populations. An example would be like the dogs on the bottom right corner. Although there are some processes that reduce phenotypic variation, there are others that increase it, such as genetic flow. Genetic flow is the transfer of a large from one population to another. Genetic flow allows for phenotypic variation by introducing new alleles, giving rise to new phenotypic characteristics. An example would be like in the picture below of the deer. In the picture below, the deer are crossing over and possibly mating and introducing new genes into these populations, increasing phenotypic variation.